it's Izzie. Wherever you're listening from, whatever your situation, and whatever brought you here, I'm so grateful that you've invested your time in listening to positive content. I truly hope you gain some valuable insights from the episode. Welcome back. This week we are returning to the 20-minute podcast. Who has time for 40 minutes? And as you may know, if you're not just listening to this, but you're seeing it too, this is also the return of the video podcasts. Hello. So you can watch as well as listen if you'd like to. Now, we're approaching December, the last month of the year, and I, for one, have been seeing Christmas decorations everywhere, as well as hearing, how is it this time of year already? So we're going to address it. Today, we're going to talk about time, and more importantly, how there never seems to be enough of it. Now, before we get properly started, there are 3 things that we tend to be searching for in life. Now, unlikely we're searching for all 3. Usually, we have one in majority, one we're very confident with, comfortable with, and happy with. The second one, we might also feel the same way. It varies person to person. And then the third one, there is always one that we feel we'd like more of. And those 3 categories are time, money, and skill. So have a think right now, which one of those, and I would say, which of those do you have the most of? But we love talking about what we don't have. We love focusing on what we lack. Not in this podcast, but as a society as a whole, we love looking at what we don't have. So let's start there. Which of those 3, time, money, or skill, do you feel like you're lacking in? Do you feel like you never have enough time, but actually, to be honest, you have the skill to do the things that you need to do, and you have the money, we're not talking millions, we're talking the money that you need to do what you need to do. Usually, whichever one of those that we have the least of is almost always what we see as the next step to growth or success. And that's why we want it more, right? Or just general comfort. For instance, if you're in a job and you don't feel you get paid enough, you then want more money in order to feel valued. Maybe you want to be in a relationship and you have the time and money for one, but you feel you lack the confidence needed to actually approach people that you like. Or maybe you've got a partner and kids and a job, so the bills are getting paid and you have the skills to complete all of those responsibilities. But maybe you just wish you had some more time. So before we begin, have a think about which one it is that you're lacking in, make sure you're solid on that, or the one that you just want more of, and then reflect on the 1 or 2 that you have more in abundance. How could you use those, the 1 or 2 that you have more in abundance, to help you get more of the other? Because the truth is, you have one, and if you have one, that's all you need, because it's the key to the others. Think about it this way. If you have time, but not skill, then you can afford to spend time reading to learn, or taking the time to talk to people in order to understand their experiences, or maybe even to try and fail. And then with time and effort, you'll develop the skill. However, if you have skill but want money, then that's almost a straightforward path into entrepreneurship, self-employment, or at the very least, a side hustle. Skill is value, and that is what people pay for. People will pay for your time, sure, but the rate will be minimum wage because there's usually no skill involved, and so anyone could do it. Most of us have it backwards. We've been brought up to believe that time equals money, but really it doesn't. It does if you consider that to be valuable enough to earn an average monthly salary in one day, then you do need to have invested time into learning and refining that skill and then preparing for the use of it. But once you've developed that skill to a high standard, your pay becomes based on your worth rather than your income. So if you have a skill, use it. If you have time, use it to develop a skill. Now, of course, this all sounds somewhat simplistic, but often the reason why we overcomplicate these things is because we struggle to stay focused on just one thing. We pick up our phone to save a date in our calendar, and instead we get distracted by a TikTok notification. We leave work excited to get home and see our family, and then we find ourselves reading work emails while we serve up dinner. In the back of our mind, we know what our priorities are. We know what would be most likely to guarantee us the quickest or most effective results. And yet in our day-to-day lives, we indulge consistently in moments of disconnect with our priorities in the present moment, interacting instead with other aspects of our life that really don't need to be dealt with there and then. Now again, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. But what if for the last month and a half of 2022, 44 days left of the year, crazy, what if we implemented a strategy that would help us to not only have the most productive end of the year, more productive than we've been all year in fact, but also able to enjoy the winter season, making the most out of spending time with family and friends, and allowing ourselves to have a well-deserved break from work or study? Wouldn't that sound great? If you said yes, let's keep going. But for those of you Grinches that didn't, those of you who don't care about the season or your own personal success, well, you guys definitely need to stay. You see, one of the main reasons we find it so difficult to stay focused on things, other than the fact that all of our attention span seems to be shortening, is because there's 1,000,001 other things in our minds that we know that we need, or maybe just want to be doing to or instead of the thing that we should be doing. The problem is that when we're doing one thing whilst thinking about something else, or even doing something else at the same time, we're not doing either as well as we could. Therefore, working out what your priorities are and roughly how long each one should realistically take, and stress on the realistically, is the first step. So do it now. Write down on paper or in your phone's note page all of the things that you have to do tomorrow. The things that if you don't, there will be repercussions that you really do not want to have to deal with. We're talking things like taking your daughter to school, which if you're watching this on a Friday isn't the case, but hey ho. Doing the washing up, writing a specific email that you've been putting off for days, I can vouch for those. Just get it all down. And then write down the other things that you ideally need to do tomorrow, but the world wouldn't shut down if you didn't. And again, next to each, write down roughly how long that they would realistically take you to do. Add up the amount of time that list should take you, and if for the mandatory things, the things that you have to do, is more than 12 hours, then get back to that drawing board. There is 100% stuff on there that does not need to be completed in one day. And telling yourself that it does is only going to make you stressed out and anxious. So set it straight in your mind right now that every single one of those tasks is actually going to be completed by the end of the day tomorrow. You see, most of the time, we put off tasks because we think they're going to be long, arduous and boring. But when we look the task in the face and think realistically, if there was no distractions, how long would this actually take me? And I'm telling you, it's usually 1/3 of the time you initially thought it would take. When it comes to doing that specific thing, your task is to focus only on that one thing that you're currently doing. If you're cleaning, running, or driving, then of course you can listen to music or a podcast whilst you do it, but count that as part of the experience rather than escape from it. As soon as what you're doing is done, you can check your phone as much as you want. You can go to the fridge, you can chat to your colleagues or housemates, you can make a hot drink. But none of those things are essential whilst you're doing the task, and that is the thing to really get. None of those things that your mind, your chimp wants you to do aren't essential. Okay? Now, recently, and bear with me on this, I've become so conscious that every time I pop to the bathroom, I instantly go on my phone. Part of the reason is due to the fact that one time my phone actually fell into the toilet because it was in my back pocket. So taking it out and holding it is always the first thing I do to prevent that happening again. But that does not mean that the 30 seconds I'm by myself with no possible distractions, except possibly some posters on the back of a cubicle door or my own thoughts, I need to find something to do. I don't. And I have the feeling that I'm not the only one who does this. Yet even whilst I'm aware of it, I'm still in such an autopilot that I repeat the same behaviour again and again and again. So, I did some Googling. And the average person uses the bathroom about 6 to 8 times within a 24-hour period. And they spend a total average of 14 minutes per day in there. Although other surveys actually suggest this figure is closer to 30. But you can tally up if you want to yourself. But regardless of how many times we go or how much time we spend there, the rough figures add up to a crazy 2 years across an average lifetime. 2 years spent in a bathroom. Now, this podcast's purpose isn't to inform you of toilet-related matters, but to raise a key point. People badger on, at least to me, about the power of meditating, a practice that actually has no set time frame. Or things like gratitude, which again, no set time frame. Deep breathing, also another big one. Same thing. Smiling, same again. I know the power of it, and it takes no set amount of time. If we were to spend those 14 minutes that we're in the bathroom each day doing one or a combination of all of those things, we could find ourselves a hell of a lot calmer or even happier overall. Now, I know that I'm currently not on target for 2 years of my life spent meditating, but again, this podcast isn't to tell you how to use your toilet time, it's to remind you that if you're not purposefully using your time will be used up before you've even decided what you want to do with it. You see, the truth is, we have more than enough time, but we fill the time that we do have, irrespective of how much we have to do. We either stretch out the things we do have to fill the time, or we find other non-essential things to do to fill it up. It's the same premise as space, for instance. We buy a bigger house to get more space to fit our stuff, but 1 year later, all we've done is actually buy more things to fill the space we now have. And same with hiring. You hire more people, but you end up just giving them more work. So join me in getting ahead of this psycho nonsense that you've got going on inside your noggin. I don't know about you, but I want to be in charge of how I use my time, so I can spend it doing the stuff that I enjoy, or at least the stuff that's going to get me closer to my goals. Tomorrow, give this a go. Decide what you're going to do with your time. And I tell you something, sometimes we need unfilled time. Time to literally do anything and nothing. Sometimes the best self-care I can have is an hour slot spent in my room just pottering, putting some music on, and then letting myself intuitively pick up a book, write, or simply be with myself. But again, that is a choice. That is chosen time. Right now, you are choosing to listen to this podcast. For some of you, whilst you do something else. And for others, you're just solely focused on this. Either way is fine. But what are you going to do afterwards? Are you going to open up your phone and try to find something to entertain you? Or are you going to actually think to yourself, how do I want or feel I need for my mental well-being or my overall sense of progression to spend this next 5 minutes, 20 minutes, or an hour? That might be to get a drink and refresh, to call a friend, or to get that email done. Make that decision now, then decide that for that length of time, that is all you're going to do. It's better to make shorter blocks of time and to be more focused in them, rather than say that for the next 2 hours, you're going to work solidly on one thing. Make the decision to give yourself 5 minutes to make and enjoy a hot drink. But if you do that, really taste it. Take time making it and enjoy the tactile process of doing it. Offer one to somebody. Enjoy it in your favourite spot. Recognise how it feels as it travels through your body. Be present with the experience, whatever it is. When we're not present in what we're doing, we don't allow ourselves the fullest experience. And rarely do we have a clear recollection of what it was actually like. Usually it exists as a foggy blur of a moment, rather than a collection of feelings, thoughts, and clear images. And you might have forgotten this, but your entire life is made up of these moments. So, do you want your life to be a foggy blur that's followed by the statement, I can't believe it's the end of another year already. Where did that time go? Or do you want it to be the sum of meaningful memories that allow you to recall images and feelings that make you feel grateful for the time that you've had, exclaiming, wow, this really has been an incredible year? The choice is yours to make, and the choice doesn't just start now, it starts in every single moment. So, from me to you in this final 10 seconds of the podcast, I want to express fully focused expression of gratitude for you listening to this podcast. And if you have enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave a comment, a rating, a review. It really, really helps more than you know. And all that's left to say is, I appreciate you.